Giuseppe sat on the boulder with his elbows resting on his knees, hands loosely folded, watching the children below. They had built the effigy from whatever they could find: bundled straw, a torn dress, a crooked stick for arms. Someone had added a scrap of cloth around its head, knotted like a hood. It leaned awkwardly, barely upright, its shape already collapsing in on itself. The children laughed as they took turns throwing stones. Their aim was clumsy. The stones struck the ground more often than the figure, but every hit was celebrated anyway. A game, a ritual stripped of meaning. Giuseppe felt his jaw tighten. He told himself he was only tired, that the sight bothered him because it was cruel, because it reminded him of stories he had heard as a boy. Old fears dressed up as play. Then, a stone struck the effigy square in the chest. The sound was dull and hollow. It reverberated strangely in his ears, and the memory broke open. The warmth came first, not heat exactly. Pressure, as if something had passed through him rather than into him. A presence withdrawing, leaving behind a residue that refused to settle. He remembered Seraphine's hand on his shoulder, steady, anchoring, her voice low, deliberate, warning him not to move. Then the sensation shifted. His vision fractured. A room not his own. Stone walls slick with moisture, candlelight trembling, not from wind, but from breath. Seraphine stood alone at a basin, sleeves pushed back, dark liquid swirling as she washed her hands. Blood diluted to rust, disappearing down a narrow channel cut into the stone. Her expression was unreadable, not satisfied, not ashamed. Focused, the image tore away. Another stone struck the effigy. Giuseppe's fingers curled into his palms. The next vision came sharper, Seraphine again, but not alone. She stood opposite a man whose face was half in shadow, pale still. His posture was calm in a way that suggested experience, not mercy, a predator who did not rush. Giuseppe felt a jolt of recognition so strong it stole his breath. He knew that presence, had felt it once before in a night he could not fully remember without his chest tightening. In the vision, Seraphine was furious, not frightened, not pleading. Her hatred was precise, controlled, old. They had history, and whatever stood between them was not finished. The memory collapsed before he could understand more. Below, the children shouted. One of them had picked up a larger stone now, hefting it with both hands before throwing it hard. It struck the effigy's head. The cloth slipped loose. And Giuseppe's world tilted. His wife stood inside a circle drawn on the floor. Chalk, ash, something darker mixed into the lines. Her hair was bound back, her face intent, but not frightened, not hesitant. She spoke words he did not understand, her voice steady, practiced. This was not experimentation. This was rehearsal. Candles surrounded her. Their flames did not flicker. She wore a pendant he had never seen before. Then, impossibly, she looked up. Not at him, at Seraphine, and Seraphine knew her. The recognition passed between them in an instant, unspoken and undeniable. The circle flared, the memory shattered. Giuseppe inhaled sharply, dragging himself back into the present. The children were still laughing. One had already begun pulling at the effigy, trying to knock it over. Straw spilled onto the dirt. No one noticed him. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with a profound disorientation. The warmth at his neck pulsed once like a fading echo. He pressed his fingers there instinctively, grounding himself in the physical world. Stone, skin, breath. But something had shifted. The stories he told himself about his life and about his marriage, about the night his wife died, no longer aligned. The pieces refused to fit back together the way they had before. He had not imagined it. The bite had opened a door, and what lay on the other side was watching him now, patient, unfinished. Giuseppe lowered his hands and continued to watch the children. But he was no longer seeing a game. He was seeing a warning, and he understood, with a quiet certainty that settled deep in his chest. Whatever Seraphine had tried to keep from him had already begun to surface, and it was not done remembering him yet. Giuseppe remained seated on the boulder, long after the children began to lose interest. The effigy no longer held their attention. Straw lay scattered across the grass. One of the children kicked at it lazily, then ran off to join the others. Their laughter faded toward the town, swallowed by distance and morning chores. The field grew quiet. Mist clung low to the ground. It moved slowly, as if undecided. Giuseppe rested his hands on his knees and focused on his breathing, in and out. Stone beneath him, cold air on his face, the familiar weight of his body still his own. Yet the sense of intrusion remained, not the memory itself, that had passed. Something else, a pressure that did not belong to him. He did not turn at first, he did not need to. The certainty came without sound, without warning. He was not alone. At the far edge of the field, near the line where grass gave way to trees, a figure stood partially concealed by the morning haze. Too still to be passing through, too deliberate to be accidental. A woman. Her posture was calm, upright, unhurried. She did not hide, but neither did she announce herself. She stood as someone who knew she would not be questioned. Her attention was not fixed on Giuseppe alone. She watched the field, the effigy, the place where the children had stood, as if confirming something. Giuseppe felt no fear. The absence of it unsettled him more than fear would have. Slowly, carefully, he shifted his weight and turned his head just enough to bring her into clearer view. She did not move. Their eyes did not meet. He could not tell if she avoided his gaze intentionally or simply had no reason to seek it. Her face was composed, pale in the filtered light, her expression unreadable, not cold, not warm. Aware, the air between them felt taut like a held breath. Giuseppe opened his mouth, then closed it again. He did not know what to ask. The woman inclined her head slightly, not a greeting, not a warning. Acknowledgement. Then she stepped back, not hurried, not retreating. She faded into the line of trees as naturally as mist dissolving under sunlight. One moment present, the next absorbed by the world as if she had never stood there at all. The field was empty again. Giuseppe exhaled. His hands trembled faintly now. The delay frightened him more than the reaction itself. He remained seated, staring at the place where she had been. The memory of his wife stirred, not as an image, as a sensation, familiar, close. He understood something then, with a clarity that settled deep in his chest. The bite had not only shown him the past, it had made him visible, and whatever his wife had been part of had never stopped watching. Giuseppe rose from the boulder before he realized he was moving. His boots sank slightly into the damp grass as he took a step forward. "Wait," he said. The word came out sharper than he intended. He swallowed and tried again. "Stop. Please." The figure at the tree line halted. For a moment, nothing happened. No sudden motion, no sign of threat. Then she turned her head slowly, not startled, not defensive, as if she had expected him to speak. Her eyes found him, steady and unblinking, large, dark, reflective in the low morning light. There was no cruelty in them, no immediate warning, only awareness. She turned fully then and faced him. She stood straight, her posture composed and deliberate, feet planted as though the earth itself recognized her weight. She did not advance. She did not retreat, a sentinel. Her hair fell long and dark around her shoulders, smooth and unadorned, framing a face that appeared almost too young for the stillness it carried. Her skin was pale and unmarked, her features delicate but precise, as if shaped with intention rather than chance. She was beautiful, not in a way that invited closeness, in a way that commanded distance. She wore dark garments fitted close to her form, simple in design but unmistakably intentional. The fabric moved subtly with the air, sheer at the sleeves, solid and structured at the core. A narrow collar rested at her throat. Metal caught the light at her chest and waist, small details that felt ceremonial rather than decorative. Nothing about her was careless. Giuseppe felt the urge to look away and resisted it. Her gaze held him without force, without threat, and yet his breath slowed. The field seemed to quiet around them, as if sound itself had decided to listen. She looked young, younger than him, younger than his memories allowed. And he knew, without knowing how, that this was not the truth. The youth was a veil, an illusion worn with ease. Behind it lay age measured not in years, but in endurance, in witness, in survival. Her stillness was not innocence, it was discipline. She had seen things. She had waded through them. Giuseppe's hands tightened at his sides, then relaxed again as he forced himself to stillness. He chose his words with care. "I don't know what I saw," he said quietly, "but it wasn't meant for me alone." She did not interrupt him. He took that as permission, not mercy. "My wife," he continued. "I loved her. I still do. Whatever she was part of, whatever she kept from me, I won't condemn her for it." His voice faltered, just slightly. "I only want to understand." The woman watched him in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, low, unhurried. "You are not asking for judgment," she said. "That is why you are still standing." The words settled into him with weight. Giuseppe met her gaze fully now. "Then tell me," he said, "why me?" For the first time, something like curiosity touched her expression. Not surprise, but recognition. "You were seen," she replied. "That is all." The morning mist drifted between them, thin as breath. Giuseppe understood then that whatever stood before him was not a messenger, not a guide, but a threshold, and that by speaking, he had already crossed it. The cave was quiet, not empty, not still, aware. Seraphine stood near the inner chamber, her back to the stone wall, hands pressed flat against the cool surface as if grounding herself. The faint glow from mineral seams traced soft lines across the rock, but she did not look at them. Her thoughts would not settle. Anger came first, sharp, immediate, instinctive. Her privacy had been breached, her memories touched, her past exposed to a mind never meant to carry it. It was intolerable. She closed her eyes. The anger did not fade, it fractured. Fear followed. Not fear of Giuseppe, fear of what she had allowed. She had bitten him. She had chosen to. No hunger had driven her, no necessity, no threat. She had felt the pull and answered it. The cave seemed to tighten around her as the truth took shape. She turned away from the wall and began to pace, her movements precise but restless. Her breath was steady, yet something beneath it trembled. She had not lost control. That was worse. She had exercised it. And in doing so, she had crossed a line she had guarded for longer than he had been alive. "Careless," she whispered. The word tasted wrong. The image of his stillness returned to her, his restraint. The way he did not reach, did not demand, did not take even when offered knowledge he did not understand. The memory unsettled her more than the breach itself. She stopped moving. "Enough," she said aloud, though she did not know to whom. "You are pacing," Thomas said quietly. Seraphine did not turn. "I am thinking." Thomas stepped closer, his movement unhurried. He did not rush her. He never did. His presence was steady, familiar, shaped by long habit rather than obedience. "You are distressed," he said. "Thinking usually comes later." Seraphine's jaw tightened. "My mind was entered without consent." "Yes," Thomas replied, "and yet you are not angry at him." That stopped her. She turned then, her eyes sharp. "You presume too much." "I observe," Thomas said calmly. "It is what I have always done." Silence stretched between them. Seraphine exhaled slowly. "I have protected my memories for centuries," she said. "What I am, what I was, what I have done. They were not meant to be shared." "No," Thomas agreed, "they were not." She looked at him then, deep into his very soul. "And yet," she said, "they were." Thomas inclined his head slightly. "You chose him." The words landed without accusation. Seraphine's gaze dropped, just a fraction. "I did," she said. "That is the truth that will not leave me." Thomas did not move. "And in choosing him," she continued, "I exposed myself." "Yes," Thomas said, "but not because he took." She closed her eyes. The realization settled fully now, clean, inescapable. "He did nothing wrong," she said. "No," Thomas replied, "he did not." The cave seemed to loosen around them, as if the stone itself accepted the conclusion. Seraphine opened her eyes again. The anger had lost its edge. The fear no longer pressed. What remained was clarity. I cannot blame him, she said, even if I wished to withdraw, even if I wished to retreat. Thomas watched her closely. Why not? He asked gently. Because I stepped forward first, Seraphine said. Because I saw him, because I wanted to be seen in return. Thomas absorbed this without reaction. Then this was not a violation, he said. It was a risk. Yes, Seraphine said quietly. And attraction, she added. I felt it. Thomas did not look away. You are allowed to feel, he said. You are not required to act. She straightened, the familiar composure returning to her posture. He belongs to another, she said. To someone dead. Yes, Thomas replied, and you honor that. Seraphine was silent for a long moment. Then, speaking softly, I do. The cave breathed again. I cannot undo what I set in motion, she said. No, Thomas agreed, but you can decide what it becomes. Seraphine turned away, reclaiming stillness. Thomas stepped back, intending to withdraw as he always did. Seraphine watched him, not as a protector, not as a subordinate, as a man who had chosen her, again and again, without demand or illusion. She paused, the moment stretched, then she moved. Slowly, deliberately, she crossed the short distance between them and placed the palm of her hand against his chest. Over his heart, the contact was gentle, intentional. Thomas did not move. He did not inhale sharply. He simply accepted the weight of her hand, the warmth of it, as one accepts something sacred. Seraphine tilted her head slightly, studying him, seeing not only what he was, but what he had given. Years, loyalty, silence, care. With a softness that would have undone any mortal man, she spoke. Thank you, Thomas. The words were simple. They carried everything. She leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek, unmistakably sincere. Thomas' breath caught just once. He lifted her hand carefully and enclosed it in his own. His touch was reverent, steady. He bowed his head and kissed her fingers, not as possession, but as devotion freely offered. When he released her, he stepped back and bowed fully. Seraphine inclined her head in return. The gesture was equal. As Thomas turned to leave, a faint smile touched Seraphine's lips, not sharp, not guarded. The cave felt warmer, not brighter. It hinted life. Something within her stirred, old, familiar, almost forgotten. Light, returning not as absolution, but as remembrance. And for the first time in a long while, Seraphine allowed herself to feel gratitude without restraint. Giuseppe stood before the stone marker, long after the light should have begun to fade. The grave rested on a slight rise at the edge of the old cemetery, where the land tilted gently toward the mountains beyond. Her name was carved cleanly into the stone, worn only by weather and time. He traced the letters with his eyes, as if reading them again might anchor her more firmly in the world. His voice trembled when he spoke. I loved you, he said. I still do. The words felt small against the silence, but he pressed on. He spoke of the life they shared, of the moments that had felt ordinary at the time and now felt impossibly precious. He spoke of his respect for her strength, her kindness, the quiet intelligence that had first drawn him to her. Then his voice faltered. I don't understand why you did not trust me, he said softly. Why you kept that part of your life hidden. He swallowed, the question heavier than the accusation. I would have stood with you, he said, whatever you were, whatever you believed. I deserved the chance to choose. The sun slipped behind the mountain ridge. Darkness followed too quickly, like a curtain pulled with intent rather than the slow patience of dusk. The air cooled abruptly, the warmth of memory draining from the space around him. The familiar comfort of the place vanished, replaced by a sensation that felt invasive, unwelcome, and alert. Giuseppe's breath caught. The silence shifted. He felt it before he saw it, a presence just beyond the line of the trees, watching with a hunger that was neither animal nor human. Eyes glimmered in the shadows, wrong in their stillness, wrong in the way they reflected nothing but malice. A whisper brushed the edges of his mind, not spoken aloud but forced inward, carrying intent rather than words. The temperature dropped further, frost creeping along the edges of the stone beneath his hand. The image of his wife's smile tried to surface. It was torn away. Her death filled his thoughts instead, vivid and merciless, replayed from angles he had never seen, accompanied by sensations that did not belong to memory: pain, terror, finality. The presence pressed closer, feeding on the fracture, amplifying the horror until his knees weakened. Giuseppe clutched his head, trying to block out the sound as the whispers multiplied. They became screams, hundreds of them, torn souls crying out in confusion and agony, colliding inside his skull in a kaleidoscope of suffering. He staggered, barely able to remain upright. The thing in the shadows advanced. Far away, deep within the stone sanctuary she claimed as her own, Seraphine stiffened. The cave had been calm only moments before. Now the air vibrated with something she had not felt in a very long time. A foul distortion rippled through the unseen fabric of the world, sharp and invasive, carrying a signature she recognized instantly. Her expression hardened. "Not here," she whispered. The sensation was distant, but unmistakable, predatory, cruel, ancient in a way that did not honor age but reveled in corruption. Whatever it was, it had crossed a boundary with intent, and it was close to something fragile. Her jaw tightened as understanding followed instinct. A human, alone. She moved toward the cave mouth, eyes fixed on a horizon she could not see, her senses straining against distance. The darkness answered with resistance, thick and heavy, as if daring her to intervene. Before she could act, the pressure spiked, then vanished. The demon lunged. Giuseppe barely had time to scream before the world exploded into light. A thunderous roar tore through the cemetery, not of wind or stone, but of countless voices woven into a single overwhelming force. The darkness recoiled as a massive golden form breached the night from above, descending with terrifying speed and absolute purpose. Wings like molten metal unfurled as the figure struck, feathers catching the light as if forged from the sun itself. Armor gleamed with a brilliance that burned the eyes, etched with symbols too old and too perfect to belong to any human craft. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. The light vanished, the sound collapsed into silence. The night returned, empty and still. Giuseppe lay on the cold earth, his chest rising and falling as he struggled to steady his breath. The world felt distant at first, as though he were hearing it through water. Gradually, sensation returned, the roughness of the ground beneath his hands, the chill of the night air against his skin, the weight of his own body, still intact, still his. His thoughts, scattered and blurred by terror and light, began to refocus. Something immense had happened, something impossible. Before he could grasp it, a presence brushed the edge of his mind, gentle and careful, familiar in a way he could not explain. Seraphine reached out to him, not to intrude, but to understand. And in that instant, she saw it. The demon, the terror, the forced memories, the golden fury that had descended like judgment itself. The scope of it sent a ripple of unease through her. Giuseppe rolled onto his side and pushed himself up onto one elbow. His gaze drifted toward the trees at the edge of the cemetery, drawn by a sudden sound. A crow perched on a low branch, its dark feathers stark against the night sky. It regarded him with unnerving stillness. The crow cawed once. Giuseppe stared at it, his heart still racing, his mind grasping for something solid to hold on to. He did not know how he knew, only that he did. He was not alone. He spoke without thinking, his voice hoarse and incredulous. What the hell was that? The crow tilted its head slightly, unbothered. Far away, at the edge of her cavern, Seraphine stood motionless on the cliff that overlooked the darkened land below. The night wind tugged at her hair as his confusion echoed faintly in her awareness. She let out a short, breathless laugh before she could stop herself. Not amusement. It was relief. He was alive. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself, as the weight of what she had sensed settled into place. The forces at play were greater than she had allowed herself to believe. Not only demons, not only hunters, not only witches. Something else had intervened, something capable of erasing beings like her as easily as it had destroyed the creature that stalked him. When she opened her eyes again, the world felt altered, sharper, less forgiving. The game had changed, and for the first time in a very long while, Seraphine understood that survival might no longer depend solely on secrecy, restraint, or strength. It might depend on what stood watching from the light.